Hey guys, it's Caitlin and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about something that I have mentioned in many previous videos, but every time that I mentioned it, I would always say it was a story for a later video, and this is the later video. Today I'm going to be talking about the time that I turned down an agent's offer of representation, which, if you don't know, if you take the traditional publishing route, then you have to have an agent in order to submit your manuscript to the majority of publishing houses, including like the big five and bigger publishing houses and things like that. Some smaller publishing houses and presses don't make you have an agent, but for the most part, if you are going the traditionally publishing route, then you do need to have a literary agent. And the way that you get a literary agent is you query them most of the time. There's some exceptions, but for the most part, querying the slush pile or pitching at a conference or something like that is the way that you get an agent. So today I'm going to be telling my story about how I actually turned down an agent offer. And for those of you who don't know, if you're new to my channel, welcome. But I am actually self-publishing my debut novel this year. But before that, actually quite recently before that, as in just last year, and then for many years before that, I was actually pursuing traditional publishing with both my novel that I'm self-publishing and my novel before that. So today in particular, I'm going to be talking about one instance where I turned down an agent offer and why I did that. Now, I'm kind of nervous to put this on the internet because I'm the kind of person that will never say anything bad about anyone, especially on the internet, and that's just not who I am. So like talking about something that is sort of has a negative like vibe to it is not really normal for me. However, I do think that there's a lot that people can take away from this experience and that I can share. And that's why the second part of the video is going to be me telling you guys some tips for how to evaluate agents if you are going the traditional publishing route, because there's a lot of things that you really have to be careful with agents, both like scam agents and then legitimate agents that might just not be the right fit for you. And that is more so the case with this agent, not that they were necessarily a scam, although there were some little red flags for me personally, but it was more so the fact that I just didn't feel good accepting this agent's offer. I didn't think that we were right for each other. And then I'm also going to talk about whether or not I regretted turning down that offer, because this was several years ago, and obviously if I had accepted it, my journey would have gone totally different than it has now. So I'm going to talk about whether or not I regret turning that down, and then again why I turned it down, and then in the second half of the video we're going to talk about some ways that you all can evaluate traditional agents if you are querying them. Okay, so first, let's just dive in. I'm not going to be mentioning any names or any clues as to what literary agency or what literary agent this was. It was a real agency and this was a real agent. However, again, I'll get into all of the reasons why later, but basically I just want to say up front that this was not a scam. So this was a real agent, and I'm not going to be mentioning anything that would give them away, because again, this video is not about bashing anyone and it is not about being negative. I just really want to pass on some of what I learned about evaluating agents and knowing that maybe not every offer that you get is the right one. So that's the purpose of this video, not to be negative at all. So that's why I'm keeping everything anonymous and not giving away any clues or ways that you guys might be able to figure out who I'm talking about. Okay, with that said, let's get into the story first of how I got my first offer of representation and then what happened after that. So like I said, this was several years ago, and I had been querying for I think a year or two at this point, but I still had a lot of querying to do after that. So my query journey with What Lies Above lasted years. And so this was one agent that I happened to query during that process. And I can't exactly remember, I probably should have done the research for this before, but I can't exactly remember when I queried them and then when they responded, but I feel like it was a pretty quick turnaround, and they wanted to see the full manuscript. Now at this point in time, I was still pretty new to querying with What Lies Above, so I hadn't gotten a ton of partial or full requests, although I had gotten some. So I was used to it, but it was still kind of new, and so every single one was exciting. And so I was so excited, and I sent the full request to this agent, and like I said, I had gotten full and partial requests from other agents as well at this point. But I sent the full to this agent, and I was so excited. I happened to really, really like this agency and this agent, so I was super excited. So then I got a response pretty quick after that. I think it was, or I don't actually remember exactly how long it is, but I feel like it was pretty quick. So don't quote me on that, but I got a response eventually from the full request, and it was an offer. And I was so, like, I could not believe it, you guys. I mean, you have to understand, like, this was my dream. Like, I wanted to go into traditional publishing and have an agent and be published by a traditional publishing house. So this was so huge, and I was so excited. And so basically what happened after that was we set up an agent phone call, and I prepared all my questions and all of that, and I was like ready for the phone call, and I was so nervous because, again, I had talked to agents before, like I had interacted with them, but mostly by email, and so I had never really talked to them on the phone, although after this point I did go to conferences, and then I had gotten more experience, but at this point I hadn't. So I was going to be talking on the phone with this agent, and I was so nervous but so excited at the same time. And so on the day of the phone call, we are talking on the phone, and I had done a ton of research about what to ask agents in the phone call, what you should be prepared with, and kind of things to like ask them to get an idea of how they feel about you and your book and their vision and all of those things, which we'll talk about a little bit later with evaluating agents. But I had all of these questions prepared, and I was really just like thorough and ready to talk to this agent. And so in the course of our conversation, it went so well. Like the phone call went so well. But as I was asking some of the questions for what I had prepared, I started getting a few, like, I don't know if I would call them red flags. I don't really think that they're red flags necessarily, but for me, they just made me a little bit uneasy. And so I started asking a few more questions. And basically as the phone call went on, whenever I hung up at the end of it, I really just felt, I don't know, I felt strange about it, and I didn't think that that's how a phone call with an agent would go. And there was just like this uneasiness, I guess, in me about this particular agent. And I'll talk a little bit later about your gut feeling with agents and how important that is. But honestly, the agent could be the most amazing, well-qualified person. And if you just feel like not good, and you do not feel like your visions match, and you do not feel like this is the agent for you, do not just accept an agent's offer just for the fact that you have gotten an offer. And I know that that's super hard because a lot of us just want our books out there. But I promise you, a literary agent, for the most part, is with you for the long haul. Like, they don't just represent one book, they represent your career. And if your vision long term, or even just for the book that you are querying, does not match, sometimes that's not a red flag. It means that the agent has more experience and might see things in the story that you might need to tweak in order to make it better for publication. So no, that's not bad. But if they are just suggesting all kinds of changes and brand new things and things that you maybe aren't comfortable with or you don't really agree with, like if you just don't think that you all are going to be able to get along or have a good partnership in the industry and in the future, please, I beg you, do not just accept any offer that you get for the sake of having an agent. That is my number one thing that I hope that you'll take away from this video, and that's ultimately why I decided to turn down this agent, was because I just didn't see like the future of What Lies Above and the future of my career aligning with the agent's vision. So yeah, but that's just a little warning for you. Not necessarily if the agent has as some different ideas and things, is it bad? But if it's like night and day, north and south, polar opposites, you might want to just consider how the future might be if you all are in this partnership for the long haul, because most of the time with agents you are. Okay, so going back to my experience with the phone call, I'm going to get into a little bit of the red flags, and this is the part that makes me nervous because this is a little bit more of like distinguishing this particular experience, and I don't know, I just always feel like worried that somehow, some way, this agency will like find out, which I know is crazy, but again, I don't want to badmouth anyone because this agent and this agency is great, and there are people who are so happy with them, but it just wasn't the right fit for me personally. So this is nothing against them at all. This is just my experience. In this phone call, the number one thing that really made me feel the most uneasy, and I'm pretty sure that in general this is an industry standard that doesn't normally happen, but again, I'm not sure, but from what I've heard, this does not normally happen. But the biggest thing that really made me a little bit uneasy or like questioning was the fact that whenever we were talking on the phone, this agent really was focusing a lot on things that happened in the beginning of the book. And so one of the questions that I had asked them was, like what their vision was for the manuscript and whether they thought that it needed to be edited like extensively, or whether they thought it was pretty ready for publication, like how they felt about that, and then what parts were like the parts that really stuck with them or were their favorites, or the reason basically why they wanted to represent me. Like, what was it about What Lies Above that really pulled them in and that really wanted to make them offer me representation. And the thing is that the person responded in a way that like was kind of vague and made me feel like maybe they hadn't read the whole book. And so I do not like conflict whatsoever, and so asking this question was super bold and hard for me to do, but in a very nice way. I just asked, like, since I was getting this feeling that they had only read the beginning, like maybe the first like chunk of it, first few chapters or even first half, I asked them like, have you read the full manuscript? And they said no, that they hadn't read the full manuscript. And again, I think this is where like the industry standard is, if you request a full, normally the agent reads the full manuscript, but I don't really know. But I know that in this case, them saying that they had not read the full manuscript made me a little bit uneasy, because they had the intention, I believe, of reading the full thing, but they had gone on ahead and offered me representation before, just based off of whatever part of the book that they had read, which for me was like, I don't know, that's probably why I was uneasy, because in my opinion, I was like, well, how do you know that the last half of the book, or however much you haven't read, doesn't just totally fall apart and there's not plot holes? And I had sent them a synopsis, so maybe they were just going off that. But I don't know, there was something about it that just really made me feel weird and uneasy that they had not actually read the full manuscript. So that was really like the root of it. And then also the fact that instead of, which this is the second thing that made me feel a little bit uneasy, but instead of saying, we're interested in, representing you, and we would like to give you however much time to respond to other agents, they kind of had like a mentality that, we were proceeding with the representation that like almost that I had already accepted the offer by having the phone call, or maybe they got that impression from what I was saying in the phone call without me actually saying like yes or no, I am or am not accepting the offer. So then in the phone call I just said, okay, like I want 2 weeks or a week or two, I can't remember exactly how long, to follow up with other agents, which is again another industry standard. If you have your manuscript out with other agents, please I've heard this from so many agents, please follow up with them before accepting an offer of representation from another agent, because some agents have already started reading your manuscript and then they might be interested in it and go to also offer or request more, and then find out that you are already agented. Don't do that. Just follow up with other agents who have like your partial or full manuscript if you are going to accept another offer. So I asked for like a week or so to follow up, or maybe 2 weeks to follow up with the other agents and see if anyone else was also willing to offer representation, which they were totally fine with. And they said, of course, yes, that's fine. Just let us know whenever, whenever you decide. So I was very grateful for that. But those two things, both the fact that they hadn't read the whole manuscript, and then also the fact that I almost got this feeling that like they assumed that I had accepted even though I like hadn't actually said yes or no. Both of those things made me a little bit uneasy. What are some other things? I think just the way that the agency was run, and every single agency is going to be run differently. And there's not necessarily like a right or wrong way. There are some things that are definitely wrong and you should look out for, like some red flags with agents. But then there are some things that are just differences. It just depends on the agent, which is again why do your research and ask those questions if you have a phone call with an agent, because sometimes your visions just don't align. And that doesn't mean that it's bad. It doesn't mean the agent's bad or that you're bad. It just means that you are not right for each other. And ultimately, don't we all, well, not for me because I'm self-publishing, but don't you all, if you are, pursuing traditional publishing, and for me at that time when I was, we all want to have an agent that might stretch us out of our comfort zone sometimes to do things, because again, they're very knowledgeable about the industry. So sometimes, a lot of times they do know things that we don't. So stretching us out of our comfort zone, but at the same time being a good fit where you feel comfortable and excited to work with them, and you feel like it's just a really great partnership that is going to be beneficial for this book and for the future as well. Okay, so we're going to move on from my story a little bit. Basically, to wrap up what happened with that, I just took some time after that to pray about it and to follow up with the other agents. And at that point I was younger, so I talked to my parents about it, and I really just felt like that was not the agent for me. And so we're gonna move into like whether I regretted it or not in a second, but basically what ended up happening was I cried a lot. And the reason that I cried was not because the agent had inherently done anything that made me cry. It was just the fact that I realized I had wanted this for so long, and then it was like right within my grasp, and then I let it go. And it was really hard and pretty devastating for me at that age, because I almost felt like I had reached the point to fall all the way back down. And so it was super devastating and hard, to be totally honest. And I struggled with it a lot. I was struggling with whether or not I made the right decision. And in the moment, we don't always know whether we're making the right decision until later when we can look back and see. And so now looking back on it, moving into the part of did I regret it or not? No, I don't regret it at all. And I know that that agent has clients that literally are so happy being with them. And that's amazing. Like, I'm so glad. And that's why, again, this is not about being negative or bashing anyone, or it's not anything against the agent. Ultimately, I think we just had different visions for the book, and for careers in my future, and that's okay. It was a hard experience for me. It was hard, and I do think there were some things that made me uneasy, and some things that, I think might not have been how stuff would normally go, but ultimately, I think that I made the best choice. And sitting where I am now, and having gone through years of querying and having agents, again, who requested partials and fulls, agents who offer representation, and agents who, I met at conferences and who really encouraged me with the book and gave me great advice, and who just were so supportive even though they might not have offered representation. Like, going through all of that and then ultimately deciding to publish What Lies Above myself, that whole journey, like, I don't regret a single moment of it, because it led me up to this point, and I'm so happy and excited for this point. But it also taught me so much, and it grew me and matured me so much as a writer and as a person. Like, a lot of these things have really matured me as a person as well. And so I don't regret it for a moment. It was a hard experience, and it was really painful at the time, and I didn't know if I had made the right choice, and I didn't know if it was all going to work out. But honestly, looking back now, I can see like how everything happened for a reason, and everything grew me in a way. And I definitely think that God like ordained every single step of that journey to lead me to this point now, and to what I'm doing with What Lies Above. And I'm so happy that What Lies Above is releasing this year, and so many of you are already so excited for it, which is like, I cannot even describe. Just getting messages from you all in comments and everything about how you can't wait to read the book. Like, that is literally the best feeling. So yes, I do not regret it at all, and I'm so grateful for every step and for everything that it taught me. And so even though it was hard, I don't regret turning that agent down at all. And I think about sometimes, well, I haven't for a really long time actually, but right after it happened, I would think, did I make the right choice? Did I make a mistake? Because in the moment, I didn't know whether I'd made the right choice, and I didn't know what might have happened if I had said yes and accepted the agent's offer, if I had gone into traditional publishing. But at the same time, we can't dwell on the unknowns and on the what ifs. And so for that reason, and because I'm so happy with where I am now, I don't regret that experience at all. However, I do think that there are things that we can still glean from it, and things that I can share with you all. So we're going to move into the second part of the video, which is how you can evaluate agents if you are going the traditional publishing route, and if you are querying agents, and if you get an offer of representation and you're going to have the phone call and all of that, then how can you evaluate agents? And actually, you can even take this a step back to evaluating them before you even query them, so that you can just avoid all of the things that might happen if you don't evaluate agents, you query them, and then you get offers from people that are either scam agents or people that just do not match your vision. Sometimes you might not know that they don't match your vision until you talk to them, but sometimes you can definitely know just by doing some research about them. And you can also normally find out if they are reputable or not by doing research as well. Again, not like every case. Some scammers are very good at making themselves look legitimate, but most of the time, you'll be able to know. And so I'm going to give you guys 3 main points very quickly about how you can evaluate agents if you are querying them, preparing to query them, or you have gotten an offer of representation. The first point is to research the agency. So almost every single literary agent, in fact, I have never seen a literary agent that isn't at an agency. Like, that's just an industry standard. Every literary agent that I've ever queried or ever heard of works for a literary agency, which normally has several. It could be like a handful, or it could be a lot of agents that work for them. And so that's like the umbrella under which all of the literary agents work. And then underneath the umbrella of each literary agent are their clients. So whenever you are looking for literary agents to query, or if you have already gotten an offer, looking at the agency itself will really give you a lot of information about whether or not they're reputable, and sometimes their vision as well. So a lot of agencies obviously have websites, so you can go to their website and just browse around and look at the agency itself. So look at like the About Me page, and just a lot of times it will have like their vision or what they're looking for or why they were founded or their, you know, beliefs or whatever. Like, it will have information about them. Just read through that, get an idea about the agency as a whole, and then of course look at the agent as well. Look at their bio, look at their social media, look at the kinds of things that they're passionate about, the kinds of books they're interested in. Look at all of that to see if your visions align, and then also just look at the agency to make sure that it's actually reputable and that it's actually legitimate. You can do that several ways, and some of them are actually other points that we're going to talk about. But honestly, if they have a credible website with agents and with like an About Me and reputable people that work there, more than likely they're probably not a scammer. And also, big point, this was not on my card, but I'm gonna add this. If they are asking you to pay to submit or to pay upfront for them to be your agency or agent, run. Okay, that is not how this works. Agents sign clients for, well, not for free, but upfront. They do not require any money. They get paid a commission based on whenever they sell your work, and then the royalties and money that are made off your book. They are not supposed to, and if they do, they are a scam, request money from you. So please don't send money to agents to read or represent you, because that's not a reputable place, and just run away, okay? Run away. Point number 2 of how to evaluate agents is look at their clients list. So one way that actually I found a lot of my potential agents that I ended up querying was just by looking at books that I like, books within my genre or authors that I enjoyed, and then researching who their agent was. Most of the time you can find it, or a lot of the times they'll thank them in the acknowledgments of a book. So if you just open any book and look for the agent, more often than not, you will find the agency or the agent listed in the acknowledgments. And so if you just look in a bunch of books within your genre, more often than not, you can find a bunch of ideas of agents that you can query. For example, let's take The Maze Runner by James Dashner. So I just pulled this book off because it was right there. And I happened to look in the acknowledgments page of the back of the book, and it says, "Sincere thanks to Lauren Abramo and everyone at Dystell and Godric," which, because I've done a lot of research about agents, I know that Dystell and Godric is a literary agency. So in the acknowledgments, he was thanking who I assume is his agent, Lauren, from Dystell and Godric Literary Agency. So if I was writing a dystopian book and I wanted to know some agents to query, I could look at a bunch of dystopian books like The Maze Runner and find some ideas for agents that might also like dystopian. And sometimes agents don't want to have all the same books on their client list. They want different things, but a lot of the time they have similar interests. Like, for example, What Lies Above is a sci-fi-ish book, so if I wanted agents that like sci-fi, I could look at other sci-fi books to get ideas of who might represent it, because not all agents represent sci-fi. And tying into the evaluating part of agents, if an agent is thanked in the acknowledgments of a published book that is actually selling by an author, you know that they're not a scammer, because clearly they've actually gone through this process with an actual author who is actually published in the traditional market and who actually sells books. So clearly they're not a scammer, because this is a legitimate book that has been represented by this agent. Alrighty, and then the third point is something that we have already talked about, so I won't go too much into depth about this, but this is their passion or vision for the book. So going back to what I mentioned earlier, please just make sure that your vision for not only this book, but your future career as their client is similar. Again, it doesn't have to be like exactly the same. Sometimes they're gonna recommend things that you might not have thought of or might not even like, but that just might be their idea or something that they're throwing out there, or something that they think could be good for your book or for you because they've been in the industry and they're very well versed and knowledgeable about things that you might not know or might not think about. So just because every idea is not going to be the same doesn't mean that they're not the agent for you. But if your visions are like totally opposite, you disagree on everything, you feel like your personalities are just not similar and would not be compatible at all, that might be something to think about if they're going to be representing your career as an author. Okay, so I think that that is all for this video, but I really want to reiterate that even though that experience was, I would not necessarily say negative, but hard for me, it was such a learning curve. That was just a decision that I had to make, you know, within myself and through prayer and, you know, what God I felt like was putting on my heart, and from other advice that I got from people close to me, from my family, from my friends. And ultimately I just felt like it wasn't the right fit. And ultimately what I want to say is, ultimately, what I want to say is it's going to be up to you. You know, you can get all the advice in the world and it's good, but if you have a feeling in your heart that that's not right, trust it, I would say, because I trusted mine, and even though it was hard and I did ask myself if I made a mistake, I'm happy that I did, and I'm so excited and just overjoyed with where I am now, even though it's been years since that happened. You know, it was still a long journey after, and I had to put a lot of work into it, and I still queried for years after that agent, and then ultimately my path changed, and that's okay too. But I would just encourage you all, if you feel like uneasy and you feel like I don't really think that this is right with a particular agent, maybe just give it some more thought and, you know, just trust that instinct. Alright guys, that is all for today. Please let me know in the comments below what you thought, and if you have ever had any agent phone calls, how they went, and just anything that you want to add to this conversation. I would love to answer any questions. If you have any recommendations for future videos, also leave them in the comments down below. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching, and if you want to connect with me on my other social media, I'll leave it down below in the description box. There's going to be a lot of things happening in the next few weeks. In the next month, I'm having, I think, 5 reveals for different things: my website, my cover, my book trailer, and all kinds of wonderful, exciting things. So definitely go follow me on my social media. I'll leave it down below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in my next video. Bye!